Okay, so now we're going to go into making sense of the order of CV sections. What do you put on that first page based on what institution you're applying to? So if any of you were not at my, my workshop 2 weeks ago about managing the academic job search, here's a quick refresher. There are over 3,000 academic higher education institutions in the United States. And this is a breakdown of sort of how to qualify them. So if I say R, I'm meaning research intensive, which are doctoral institutions that are categorized as R1 or R2. And this is based on how many doctorates they produce and how much money they spend on research. This is only 6% of the universities in the US. So if you're applying to only R1, just be aware that there are not many of them and they are highly competitive. There are more teaching opportunities at RT institutions, which are a combo of research and teaching. So these are institutions where they may have some doctoral students, but they mostly have undergraduate and master's students, and there's an option to engage in research at those institutions. And so there's going to be a combination of teaching is going to be really important because you're going to have a large teaching load, but they're also looking at research. And can you cater your research to the population you're working with? Can you cater your research to undergraduate students who are brand new to science? And then teaching only institutions, these are ones that have no research whatsoever. Some bachelor's institutions will fall into this category, but it's also mostly associate's institutions, which means any community colleges. I'm not going to be focusing on other institutions. These can include medical centers, health professions schools, art schools, so these are going to be less likely that you may apply to. So the institutional characteristics, summarizing what they're looking for. A research-intensive institution is going to be focused on the integration of graduate students and postdoctoral scholars in research. There's going to be more funding and more state-of-the-art resources, so fancy microscopes and the like. There's going to be an expectation for the faculty to be able to procure large grants like an NIH R01, and there's going to be a lower teaching load of 2 courses or fewer each semester. The emphasis there is on research prestige. At research and teaching institutions, they're going to be focused on the student learning experience both in and outside of the lab. And these will be master's and undergraduate students. There will be less access to funding and fewer state-of-the-art resources. There may be a higher teaching load of 2 to 4 courses per semester. And they're really focused on that teaching and mentoring quality. And then teaching only institutions have 0 research whatsoever. There is going to be a very high teaching load of 5 courses per semester. They're going to support diverse student needs, the diverse student population that are often found at these institutions. And they're going to be focused on teaching quality in the classroom. So when we're looking at the desired qualifications that reviewers, the search committee is looking at, for research intensive, this is a summary of my last workshop. Research intensive, they're going to be focusing on research vision and independence, publications and the ability to communicate research to experts in the field, a funding plan for your research, and teaching experience or interest. For research and teaching, they'll be looking at many of the same qualities as above, but the added qualities are going to be feasibility for a student population, the ability to communicate research to students and mentor students in the lab, and then teaching experience, pedagogy, and commitment to serving the student population at an RT school. At a teaching-only school, they are looking for teaching experience. Ideally, you've been the instructor of record, meaning you were the sole person responsible for organizing a course. We're also looking at your pedagogy and teaching practices and your commitment to serving a diverse student population. So if you remember the qualifications that reviewers, the search committee is looking at for different CVs, and our search committee is really going to be focusing on reputation, productivity, and fundability. and less so teaching, mentoring, and service, though those are components. While a T-Search committee is going to be focusing on teaching, mentoring, and service, and less on reputation, productivity, and fundability. So when you're looking at ordering sections in a CV, here I'm showing the order for research intensive versus teaching only. You'll notice that the first page or two of a research intensive is going to focus on research, experience, funding, publications, and presentations. More teaching components like experience and mentorship are going to come later in the CV. They shouldn't get that prime real estate of the first 2 pages. While a teaching-only institution is going to prioritize teaching in the first 2 pages. So you could put academic appointments if you want to talk about the fact that you're an adjunct instructor. I recommend putting teaching experience on the first page, following up with any pedagogical training. So did you do the teaching preparation series through the Faculty Innovation Center? What is your mentorship experience? What's your academic service and your community service? So have you engaged in teaching the public about science? That's going to be very appealing to them. And less important is going to be your research experience, your publications, and your presentations. How do you determine research and teaching order? I unfortunately cannot give you a one-size-fits-all answer. It is extremely variable based on institutional priorities. So, you know, a master's institution that really focuses on research is going to be different from, you know, a bachelor's college that has less of a focus on research. And so this is from an article from the Professor is In on the Chronicle of Higher Education, where someone asked, oh, how do I order research and teaching for an RT institution? So the recommendations were to determine the priorities of the institution so that you could learn what to order first, research or teaching. You should look at the phrasing of the ad itself. So what comes up first in the ad? Research or teaching? Do they mention wanting a scholar with, you know, experience in XYZ, also responsible for teaching? So that means research first, then teaching. Or are they looking for someone to teach courses on XYZ and also continue scholarship in this field? There they put teaching first, so I would recommend putting teaching experience first. Teaching load. If the teaching load is over 3 courses per semester, you might want to put teaching experience first. And then scholarly record of the hiring department. So what are the research expectations? What kind of research is done in that institution? If it seems it's like it's at a pretty high level, you can put research first. So this is a quote from a professor at a small liberal arts college, Mount Holyoke, that does do undergraduate research. And she says that her job breaks down to 40% teaching, 40% research, and 20% service. So teaching and research are weighted equally, but other institutions can have a different weighting. So she wants to see evidence that they're drawn to teaching and that they have that experience, but also evidence that they have a really solid research program, because those publications and grants will indicate that you have the ability to start a lab and get going once you get on campus. So this is my recommendation, and for the majority of RT, though it can change. Start with education, of course. I would consider putting academic appointments because that section allows you to summarize all of your research and teaching experience together. So you can include your postdoctoral experience, your guest lectureship, your teaching assistant, your assistant instructor experience all together. I would then go into research experience and perhaps follow it up with research funding right away and then go to teaching experience. But this can be variable. Research experience and teaching experience should be on those first 2 pages. And then go into mentoring and funding, and publications and presentations can be later in the documents because everyone is always going to go look at that. You don't necessarily have to put it on page 1 or page 2 because you know that the reader is going to skim through the rest of the document to the publication section and read that more thoroughly. And then things like honors and awards and service can go at the end. So it's really this section between academic appointments and mentoring experience that is very variable. So some of you can put research experience first, then teaching experience, then funding, then mentoring, or mix it up. It's really a judgment call based on what you think the institution wants.